Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen, amen, namaste.
Oath or affirmation, announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members, I have received communication from the Honorable Major General Retired Edmund Dillon, MP, member for Point Fortin, seeking leave from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the member seeks is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers.
The Deputy Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. Paper number 1, the sessional report of the 4th session, 2018-2019, 11th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Paper number 5, the notification of Her Excellency, the President, in respect of the nomination of Dr. Simon Alexis for appointment as a member of the Police Service Commission. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. The annual report of the operations of the Interception of Communications Act, Chapter 1508, for the period January to December 2017. The Sexual Offences Amendment to Schedule 1, Order of 2020. Thank you.
The Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. Paper number 3, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government on the 20th report of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee on the examination into the approval process for land use in Trinidad and Tobago. Paper number 4, the second ministerial response of the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts on the 27th report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the expenditure and internal controls of the National Carnival Commission of Trinidad and Tobago for the years 2010 to 2018. Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker.
The Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts. The Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts.
Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, I have the honor to lay paper number 7, the White Paper on the National Cultural Recognition Policy. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The member for Laventille West.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I have the honor to lay the interim report of the Joint Select Committee on National Security in the 5th session, 2019-2020, 11th Parliament, on an inquiry into crime, the security, safety, and protection of the citizens. Thank you.
Member for San Fernando West.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the interim report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Cannabis Control Bill 2019 in the 5th session, 11th Parliament.
On notice, questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House.
Very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are 7 questions for oral answer. We will be answering all 7. There are no questions for written response.
Member for Chaguanas East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 17 to the Minister of Education.
The Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in September 2015, upon assuming office, we encountered a disorganized school construction program with 116 construction projects in various stages of completion and billions of dollars owed to contractors. On closer examination, we found that contracts for 46 of these projects were awarded during a 6-month period between March 2015 and September 2015 in an election year. The financial commitment of these 46 projects amounted to approximately $894 million. This was in addition to $2.1 billion in commitments to the incomplete projects initiated earlier than 2015. All told, at September 2015, the total commitment of the Ministry of Education for incomplete and ongoing school construction projects was in excess of $3 billion. Given the drastic decline in revenues from petroleum, which began in 2014 and accelerated in 2015, burdening the state with additional commitments in the latter half of 2015 to the tune of $894 million can only be considered as irresponsible and unsustainable. Further, in September 2015, when we assumed office, with oil and gas prices plummeting, we found that several contractors were already owed substantial sums, which negatively affected their ability to maintain construction site activity. Faced with this challenge, the Ministry of Education has been using its resources available to it to settle the amounts owed. Over the past 4 years, hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent to pay overdue accounts from previous years and associated claims and High Court judgments awarded to contractors. The sheer weight of the remaining indebtedness is still daunting. In addition to almost $1 billion in funds provided under the IDF over the last 4 years to the Ministry of Education to settle debts to school building contractors incurred by the previous government, the Ministry of Finance has also raised $400 million directly to settle arrears of payments owed to these contractors using MTS as a paying agent. Madam Speaker, in view of the massive debt burden and economic challenges we faced, one of the practical approaches taken was to develop a priority listing of schools for completion. This priority list largely comprised incomplete ECC centers, primary schools, and secondary school projects, but also included a few completely new projects. This list initially numbered 22 projects, but was later expanded to 27 projects. To complete these 27 projects, the Ministry of Finance has been authorized to raise $800 million in loan financing, $400 million of which has already been raised, and MTS has been selected as the implementing agency for the projects. The 27 priority projects are as follows: Belmont Boys RC School, Santa Flora Government Primary, Malabar Government Primary, Ramai Trace SDMS Primary, Sipere Union Presbyterian Primary, Sarah Boys and Girls Government Primary, Marabella Boys and Girls Anglican Primary, Lower Mova Government Primary, Piccadilly Government Primary, Maruga AC Primary, St. Philip's Government Primary, Fanny Village Government Primary, Chatham Government Primary, Bellevue ECCE, Wallerfield ECCE, La Horquetta ECCE, Egypt Oasis ECCE, Holy Cross College, Arima Central Secondary, Mount Hope Secondary, St. Joseph Secondary, Barataran North Secondary, Toko Secondary, Bishop's Annecy High, St. Augustine Girls High, Hillview College, and Holy Name Convent. Madam Speaker, of these priority projects, One of these priority projects is already complete, and construction has already resumed at 9 other priority projects. The approximate start and completion dates of these schools are as follows. Belmont Boys RC Primary, status, school completed and occupied. Outstanding payment to consultant is pending.
Honourable Member, your speaking time is now spent. Supplemental, Member for Shogunasees.
Madam Speaker, Honourable Minister, could you tell us, I know you were on the way to saying some that are completed. Could you tell us during that period of time whether you said one was fully completed? Are there any other schools that have been fully completed and occupied over the last 4 years of your tenure?
Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, I was very clear in my response. One of those schools has been completed. That is the Belmont Boys RC School. I don't see the reason for asking that question, just repeating what I've said. Thank you.
Supplemental, Member for Shogunasees.
Much, Madam Speaker. Honourable Minister, did that school start under your tenure, or was it an inherited school?
Member, I will not allow that based on the question that was asked and the answer given. Any more supplemental questions? Okay. Member for Point of Pit.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 29 to the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Act number 1 of 2015, pertaining to the public procurement and disposal of public property, states at subsection 63 that the Minister may, on recommendation of the office, make regulations to give effect to the provisions of the Act, including regulations with respect to A, the conduct of challenge proceedings under Part 4, B, the addition to or removal from an ineligibility list under Section 58, 2, regulations made under this section may provide that the contravention of any regulation constitutes an offense and may prescribe penalties for any offense not exceeding a fine of $1 million and imprisonment for 5 years. And 3, regulations made under this section shall be subject to affirmative resolution of Parliament. On various occasions in 2019, draft procurement regulations were submitted by the procurement regulator to the Minister of Finance, who sent them to legal counsel for review to determine whether the draft regulations were intra vires the Act. The Ministry of Finance also undertook its own internal review to determine whether the draft regulations were consistent with the aims and objectives of the Act. The procurement regulator was subsequently advised of the comments of legal counsel and the Ministry's own views on the draft regulations, and the regulations were revised by the regulator and resubmitted. There were also discussions and an exchange of views on the wording of the Act itself, particularly the manner in which government-to-government contracts and public-private partnerships should be treated, as well as how the disposal of public property should be handled, and whether further amendments to the Act should be made before it is fully proclaimed. The last correspondence from the regulator was received by the Minister of Finance on December the 18th, 2019, in which the regulator indicated, among other things, that his office should not be responsible for the disposal of public property because the Office of Procurement Regulation is a regulatory and oversight body and should not be directly involved in matters which it is required to regulate. This point has been accepted and requires an amendment to Section 13 of the Act. The regulator also gave his views on Section 7 of the Act in that letter with respect to government and public-private partnership projects. These views will be considered in the final proposed amendments to the Act. Naturally, the final form of the regulations will flow from the final form of the Act. Following that letter of December 18, 2019, the draft regulations and proposed amendments to the Act were submitted to Cabinet and sent to the Legislative Review Committee for final review. Barring unforeseen circumstances, it is anticipated that the final amendments to the Act will be laid and debated in Parliament in March 2020, followed by the regulations shortly thereafter.
Member for Point-a-Pierre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 30 to the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. No interest-bearing government bonds to meet VAT arrears have been issued to any businesses to date. However, it is anticipated that the first tranche of these bonds, in the amount of $1 billion, will be issued by the end of March 2020, with 2 more tranches of $1 billion each to follow shortly thereafter.
Supplemental member for Point-a-Pierre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Honourable Minister, could you state what was the delay of issuing any of these tranches of the VAT refund in via bonds based on your budget statement in October 2019?
Minister of Finance.
There was no delay, Madam Speaker. We had always indicated that these bonds would be issued in the first quarter of 2020, calendar 2020. However, I can say that one of the things that we have considered is what the relevant interest rate should be and the relevant tenor of the bonds in order to ensure that businesses derive maximum benefit from the bonds. But there was no delay.
Member for Caroni East.
Honourable Minister, bearing in mind the percentage that you had on the bond issue, is there any thought process of changing the interest rate on that in pursuance of the bond to come?
Minister of Finance.
Yes.
Yes.
Member for Point-a-Pierre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Minister state what will be the interest-bearing amount or the interest rate on the first tranche of bonds?
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, what we are seeking to do is to ensure that the bonds would be traded at par. These are interest-bearing tax-free bonds. The yield curve currently for 3-year financing to the government is 3%, but those are tax-payable interest bonds. So you have to gross up the tax-free interest to get the interest rate. So we're looking at it closely, but it will be somewhere between 2.5% and 3%, based on further discussions with the banks to see that they would trade the bonds at par, so people will get 100 cents on the dollar. That's what we're seeking to do.
For Caroni East.
What would be the government's position in relation to companies which have decided not to go into the bond issue or participate in it and stay outside of that realm? What will happen to their VAT refunds which have been long outstanding? Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I think in my response to the supplementary question from the member for Point-a-Pierre, I would have allayed any concerns the member for Caroni East would have. But let me elucidate further. If the bonds are tradable and transferable and tax-free, and the interest rate is so chosen so that commercial banks will purchase the bonds at par, they're equivalent to cash. So if a businessman gets an instrument which is a government-guaranteed bond tax-free that can be purchased by a commercial bank at par, then, and he doesn't want to take it, I'd be surprised.
Member for Point-a-Pierre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 31 to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, import and export licenses in respect of goods that are still subject to import-export control, such as transportation fuels, are issued by the Trade License Unit of the Ministry of Trade and Industry. The section operates under the authority of the Import-Export Regulations of 1941 as continued in force by Section 10 of the Trade Ordinance of 1958 and the third schedule of the Customs Act, Chapter 7801. At present, Madam Speaker, Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited is the only entity authorized to import fuels to the domestic market. At present, there are no plans to open up the market to private operators.
Supplemental, member for point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister, Paria Fuel Trading Company, as you just stated, is the only company in Trinidad that has the rights to import fuels. If that company is sold by the government in the near coming months, would there be consideration to open up the market for the importation of fuel by private investors?
Minister of Energy and Energy Industry.
Madam Speaker, the issue of Paria trading and its future is intrinsically linked with the current negotiations between Patriotic Energies and the government. I can give this House the assurance that at no point in time will the country be out of fuel, and for whatever reason, when the refinery restarts, it will supply the domestic market. Until then, Paria will be allowed to trade in importing fuel as the sole trader.
Member for Faisabad.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 38 to the Minister of Health.
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Pursuant to the Nursing Personnel Act, Chapter 2953, and regulations made thereunder, the Regional Examination for Nursing Registration, RENR, falls under the direct, and let me repeat, direct remit of the Nursing Council of Trinidad and Tobago, not the Ministry of Health. However, the Nursing Council of Trinidad and Tobago has indicated that the Regional Examination for Nursing Registration, held on October 3rd, 2019, were released by the Caribbean Examinations Council on 21st January 2020, and to date, all candidates who wrote the examination have received their results. Thank you very much.
Member for Faisabad.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 39 to the Minister of Health.
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much again, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this question deals with the number of deaths for influenza virus. The annual number of confirmed deaths with respect to the influenza virus is as follows. 2013, and pay attention, Trinidad and Tobago. 2013, no data available. Data was either not collected or made known to the public. 2014, no data available. Data either not collected or made known to the public. What was being hidden, no one knows. 2015, no data available. Data either not collected or made known to the public. 2016, under this administration, zero. We started to collect data and make it known. 2017, zero. 2018, 7. 2019, 44. Over the last 12 months, February 19, 2019 to February 18, 2020, the number of confirmed deaths from the influenza virus was 41. Before I take my seat, Madam Speaker, I would like to put on record the interest of Member Faisabad for influenza deaths and ask him directly, and I will give way. Do you agree with the statement made by Caroni East?
Member.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. Supplemental, member for Faisabad.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 40 to the Minister of Health.
Order. Member for Faisabad.
Question number 40.
Supplemental question.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The Southwest Regional Health Authority has indicated that visiting privileges of Dr. Peter Mayer have been suspended since December 2019, and that he can reapply for privileges based on new guidelines that were recently approved by the Board of Directors, and due consideration will be given to his application. The key reason for the suspension was concerns raised about alleged and potential breaches of patient confidentiality. Thank you again, Madam Speaker.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers.
The Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have been authorized by the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago to make the following statement. I have the privilege of laying before this Honorable House the National Cultural Recognition Policy for the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago as a white paper. On February 12, 2020, I had the privilege of laying before this Honorable House the country's first national policy on culture and the arts as a green paper for public comment. That groundbreaking policy initiative, with its vision of a thriving, inclusive, and dynamic cultural sector at the center of national development, is the impetus for this national cultural recognition policy, which responds to several goals and objectives in the draft National Policy on Culture and the Arts. Two of these related goals are, 1, to enhance cultural confidence by enriching the participation of all in cultural development that transforms the social and economic experiences of the nation, and 2, to support artists, entrepreneurs, and industry associations in the production of high-quality output. The National Cultural Recognition Policy's contribution to these goals is premised on the view that encouraging and rewarding cherished qualities in the nation's artists will produce artists who innovate and consistently produce superior cultural products, while encouraging consistent financial supporters of Trinidad and Tobago's art forms. The National Cultural Recognition Policy will deliver 3 types of cultural recognition initiatives. 1, cultural awards, which seek to honor excellence in culture and the arts. 2, cultural ambassadors, who will promote the culture of Trinidad and Tobago afield. And 3, cultural legends, which will commemorate the long and meritorious work of artists and artistes in the cultural sector. The Cultural Awards component carries 10 categories of awards, allowing a range of artists at different stages in their journey in the arts to be recognized. The 10 categories are Best New Artist or Group, Most Consistent Artist or Group, Most Innovative Artist or Group, International Breakthrough Artist or Group, Outreach or Advocate Individual Artist or Group, Cultural Heritage Award, Sustainable Environment Award, Cultural Entrepreneur of the Year, Champion of the Arts Award, Culture and Arts Education Award. Most of these awards target artists, organizations, groups, and educators in culture and the arts. However, the Champion of the Arts Award targets persons or organizations which consistently support, sustain, and promote the arts and culture of Trinidad and Tobago through their financial generosity. These awards require individuals to be of good character and to uphold the values and principles incumbent upon a representative of Trinidad and Tobago. The cultural ambassador, in particular, will be expected to promote and advance the culture of Trinidad and Tobago and to promote this nation globally as a premier cultural and heritage tourism destination in the Caribbean. The National Cultural Recognition Policy will devolve a range of benefits to awardees and the nation as a whole. Beneficiaries of the Cultural Awards program will have the permanent honor of having received such a distinguished award. Cultural ambassadors will receive a diplomatic passport for the duration of their term and an honorarium. The cultural legend will receive an array of benefits, including a one-time bursary in their name for undergraduate degrees in any performing, literary, or visual arts discipline at a local university, the issuance of a diplomatic passport to the legend for the duration of his or her life, a lifetime pass for 2 at national performing spaces, a commemorative biographical magazine, and a permanent artist expression for display at the National Museum and Art Gallery of Trinidad and Tobago, along with a cash benefit of $250,000. A National Cultural Recognition Committee will oversee this array of award programs. The committee will have a 3-year life cycle and comprise senior public officers and cultural experts drawn from academia, the media, young artists, the business sector, and cultural organizations representative of the 2 major ethnic groups in Trinidad and Tobago. Secretarial services for this committee will be provided by the Culture Division of the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts. Madam Speaker, the National Cultural Recognition Policy will reward and encourage excellence in the arts, nurture talent and culture in the arts, and impact the expansion and sustainability of financial contributions to culture and the arts from sources outside of the government. I am therefore pleased to contribute this important initiative to the cultural ecology of Trinidad and Tobago as a stimulator and energizer to an already dynamic cultural sector, to ensure that the sector deepens its impact on the economy of Trinidad and Tobago and the lives of every citizen of this beloved nation. I thank you.
The Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have been authorized by the Cabinet of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago to make the following statement. Madam Speaker, I last addressed this Honorable House on the 31st of January this year on the measures that government were putting in place to mitigate the importation of the novel coronavirus, now called COVID-19, into Trinidad and Tobago, and to treat with the virus if it arrives on our shores. At that time, the assurance was given to this Honorable House that the government will continue to be transparent in this matter and will keep the population informed of developments. In that address to the Honorable House in late, Madam Speaker, could Member for Naparima please be quiet?
Honorable members, let's try and abide by the standing orders. Please, if one has to speak, speak in low terms. Minister of Health, please continue.
Thank you. In that address to the Honorable House in late January, it was indicated that there were approximately 9,776 confirmed cases of the virus worldwide, with approximately 9,658 in China, with the remaining 118 spread over 20 countries. At that time, and in an effort to mitigate against importation of the virus into Trinidad and Tobago, the government imposed travel restrictions on visitors from China for a 14-day period after departure from China. This Honorable House was also advised at that time of the measures that were being put in place at ports of entry for thermal screening of arriving passengers. There is currently thermal screening of passengers at the nation's airports and heightened vigilance at seaports, inclusive of commercial and cruise vessels. It is also to be emphasized that at this time, there are no confirmed or suspected cases of COVID-19 in this country. However, we need to continue to be proactive and vigilant. Madam Speaker, the situation with regard to the spread of this virus has now escalated considerably. From approximately 10,000 confirmed cases in late January, the number of confirmed cases worldwide has now increased to 82,294, with 78,630 of these cases in China, and the remaining 3,664 now spread to 46 countries worldwide. The World Health Organization has recently indicated that it is not if, but when the virus will reach pandemic proportions. Additionally, PAHO yesterday called on countries of the region to ramp up preparations and response capabilities against COVID-19. It is noteworthy that CARFA has now revised the risk factor for this region from low to moderate to high in respect of the importation of the virus into the region. This Honorable House is assured that the government has been proactive in treating with this issue. The government is fully aware of the risk factors to this country of this virus, which is considerably highly virulent in that it is fast-spreading, infectious, and aggressive. Through you, Madam Speaker, the government wishes to assure this Honorable House that it is in control of the situation and has put measures and resources in place to manage this risk. Our immediate focus remains to interrupt the transmission of the virus to this country. In this regard, yesterday the Cabinet took a decision to impose travel restrictions similar to what prevails for travel from China to 5 other countries where there is the greatest local spread of the virus. These countries are South Korea, Italy, Iran, Japan, and Singapore. Further, travel restrictions will be imposed on other countries as and when required, given the rapid spread of the virus. It is noteworthy that the number of new cases outside China is now greater than within China. Given the serious threat of the rapid spread of imported cases across the globe and the need to protect health and well-being of the population in the event of an outbreak here, the following measures have been implemented to increase the capacity for isolation and quarantine, to treat patients and to prevent the spread of the virus through the following measures. 1, the increased number of quarantine beds at Cora Hospital from 4 to 24 becoming available in another 2 weeks. 2, if required, the use of the 67-bed facility at the St. James Medical Complex within 2 weeks, and access to the new 85-bed facility at the Port of Spain General Hospital. It is noteworthy that these new facilities were designed and built a year ago with their own isolation capacity. And in the event of a major outbreak, a dedicated facility will be the Couva Hospital and Multi-Training Facility will be made available to treat with patients. This will provide another 230 beds. The Ministry of Health is examining the requirements to make such an isolation unit and quarantine facility available at the Couva Hospital and Multi-Training Facility, and plans have already been put in place for speedy implementation. In this regard, the Ministry is at present conducting an audit of equipment and supplies required in the event of a serious outbreak of the virus in this country, and will take steps to source what is required. In moving forward, a holistic approach is required to mitigate the high risk of emerging new infectious diseases, which have occurred in the last decade and with the potential to disrupt national life. As such, there is a need for a multi-sectoral approach that will act as the main driver for further action, as there can be severe implications for the country for key sectors, including tourism, sports, culture, trade, foreign affairs, and national security. This will also be the management strategy in dealing with any emerging infectious diseases in the future. In this regard, Cabinet recently approved a new grading system as an alert for public health emergencies. The Cabinet yesterday agreed also to the establishment of a standing multi-sectoral committee under the chairmanship of the Chief Medical Officer and comprising representatives of relevant organizations to treat with COVID-19 and any emerging infectious diseases. Some of the organizations on this committee are relevant arms of the Ministry of National Security, such as the Defense Force, the Police Service, the Immigration Department, and the ODPM, in addition to representatives from the THA and TEMA, Tobago Emergency Management Agency. This committee will be charged with the following responsibilities. 1, translating the World Health Organization's strategic objectives to the national context. 2, leading the development and implementation of an integrated and multi-sectoral activity to execute the contextualized objectives. 3, providing oversight to the monitoring and evaluation of these activities. And 4, reporting to the Minister of Health and the Minister of National Security on progress and achievements made with regard to preventing the transmission of COVID-19 or any other emerging infectious disease. With these measures, the assurance is given to this Honorable House that the Ministry of Health is continuously monitoring the progress of COVID-19 within the global, regional, and local context, and will scale up its overall response plan with sufficient resources to allow for building local capacity, networks among agencies within the public and private sectors, and training, and most importantly, protection of our frontline personnel with full PPE, hazmat suits, etc. At the Ministry of Health, it is our responsibility and duty to ensure that the population is protected from any public health risks. As indicated before, we have already instituted precautionary measures, and we are scaling up operations in the event that we have to treat with the virus in terms of isolation centers, quarantine facilities, health personnel, personal protective equipment, pharmaceuticals, and other resources. As Minister of Health, the assurance is given to the population through you, Madam Speaker, that the technocrats at the Ministry of Health will keep the population continuously informed and updated with relevant information concerning COVID-19. The population is urged to take all precautionary actions and adhere strictly to the guidelines and protocols, information and instructions of our medical and non-medical workers, who continue to go beyond the call of duty in offering an invaluable service to our population. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Caroni East.
Standing Order 24-4, if I'm permitted. Honorable Minister, bearing in mind the incubation period had been spoken about by WHO of 9 to 14 days, and with the recent finding of that extending to possibly 24 days, the government's policy on the quarantine for people coming into Trinidad from these 5 countries, bearing in mind you have 14 days that you spoke about waiting before coming in, and the incubation period being 24 days, is there any reconsideration on that issue, or are you going to stay with the 14 days?
Mr. Health.
Madam Speaker, I have seen no definite source of material that can be confirmed, that has been peer-reviewed, that says conclusively that the incubation period is 24 days. If you have it, make it available. We stand right now at 14 days. We will adhere to WHO guidelines. And if the incubation period is seen to be more than 14 days, the government will act responsibly and do what is in the best interest of every single citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. This is not a matter for political grandstanding. This is a matter for all of us to come together and show the world that we can fight a common enemy without political rancor. Let us stand together against this unseen, invisible, common enemy to Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the House, and moved by a minister.
Leader of the House.
Very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I seek leave to defer this item of business to later in the proceedings in order to move procedural motions arising from the interim reports laid today. Thank you, ma'am.
If it's granted, this item is deferred to later.
Public business, private members' business, motions.
Member for Naparima.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hereby seek leave to move the following private member's motion in my name under the relevant standing orders. Whereas since 2015, this government has been unable to provide for the safety and security of citizens, resulting in increases in serious crimes, particularly murder. And whereas in 2019, Trinidad and Tobago has experienced 2 consecutive years with over 516 murders, and witnessed in 2019 the second highest annual murder rate in its history. And whereas the government has been unwilling or unable to articulate specific, measurable, timely, and outputs-oriented crime reduction targets, And whereas the government has failed to realize that a whole-of-government approach to solving crime is necessary, be it resolved that this House condemns this government for its failure to deal with rampant crime. Madam Speaker, before I begin, I'd like to extend sympathies and condolences to the MP and constituents of Faizabad. Ms. Kavita Premchand was shot this morning and is fighting for her life at the San Fernando General Hospital. We extend sympathies to her family. We also extend condolences to a fisherman who was shot and killed at Otaheite Bay yesterday. And condolences to his family. Madam Speaker, that lays the sense of recency, the sense of nearness, pervasiveness of crime in Trinidad and Tobago at this time. And I would like to identify 7 points prior to getting into my contribution. The first, Madam Speaker, fundamental and strong statement is that this Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley-led administration, given that we are on target for close to 600 murders this year, is clearly not up to the task of providing for our safety and our security. Madam Speaker, with over 2,000 citizens killed since taking office in September 2015, this Rowley-led administration must take shame, if it has any, and do the honorable thing and resign immediately. Madam Speaker, this Rowley-led administration cannot forever continue to blame others for its gross incompetence, since in 2015, it falsely claimed that it was ready to deal with crime. Madam Speaker, they must never be allowed to get away with the foolishness that while this national security minister is not performing on the job, yet he displays the requisite energy. Madam Speaker, the fifth point, this Rowley-led administration must not use the excuse that it is now belatedly aware from CARICOM that crime is a health issue. Was he not aware of this prior to 2015, Madam Speaker? Was he not aware of the people's partnerships? Who is the he? The Honorable Prime Minister and his government, the Honorable Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. Was he not aware? Was the member not aware of the People's Partnership's sterling performance record in this area, as identified in the IADB report dated November 2016? This government must call elections soon so that our country can find solace, hope, safety, and security in the performance-oriented and competent arms of a new UNC government led by the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, SC. And that is why we are here today, in the last days of the most incompetent government ever seen in this country, and which must be removed forthwith. We are here to discuss what is the most pressing crisis in our country today. Never in the history of Trinidad and Tobago have we witnessed crime so pervasive, so overwhelming, and so beyond the capabilities of those charged with its responsibility. Everywhere is unsafe. Everyone is scared. No one is untouched by it, and we heard today the constituents of Faizabad. In every corner, citizens are indicating that they do not feel safe. Foreign governments are telling their citizens not to come to Trinidad, and if they do, to exercise extreme caution. We avoid certain areas. We do not go out at certain times. We have become a citizenry governed by and in constant fear of the scourge of crime. We swiftly perform errands and race back home. We think twice about defending ourselves. We are scared even to watch someone the wrong way. This is no way to live, Madam Speaker. No way to exist. I remember the days when we could go to a neighborhood parlor without fear, when we could visit even secluded beaches with our families, when you could send your children on errands and not worry, and offer rides to strangers. Not again. What is the background to the crime under this PNM, Madam Speaker? Over 2,200 citizens have been murdered under their watch. 2,200 of my fellow citizens are dead today. 810 murdered under this clueless Minister of National Security. I repeat, 810 living bodies dead. 30 elderly citizens murdered last year. 30 elderly citizens. Sexual assault and domestic violence cases increased to 757 in 2018, from 531 1 year earlier, and 491 were reported in 2016. So it's a progression of murders and deaths in this society. For the first 6 weeks of 2020, 10 females have been murdered compared to 8 last year. Since 2015, crime has worsened, culminating in a spate of murder, homicides, and news reports with headlines like 11 killed in 24 hours. That is one person being killed every 2 hours in this country. For heaven's sake, where are we going? Is this Baghdad? Is this Afghanistan we are talking about? Is this Gaza? Express front page, 7th January. Bloody Monday, triple murder in Arima. School principal stabbed to death. Express front page, January 16, 2020. That's a few weeks ago. Kidnapped doctor dies with bloody crash. Gunmen killed 2 in city attack. And it ends with rampage. Rampage. Express front page, 17 January this year. 3 shot dead. Guardian front page, February 12, 2020. Another bloody day. 6 more murdered. For heaven's sake. In the Senate recently, Madam Speaker, the Minister of National Security, in his characteristically modeled response to Senator Hussein's well-articulated motion on crime, attempted to blame the UNC for his poor performance record. And we could say, Father, forgive him, for he knows not what he says. Perhaps too young, perhaps too inexperienced, perhaps too unqualified, or too lacking in a track record to know that it is the people's national movement that invented, sustained, maintained, and ingrained crime in the culture of Trinidad and Tobago.
Please continue.
Tell us about Gene Miles. They don't want to hear about it. Who was sent to the madhouse for whistleblowing. Tell us about the gas station racket, and I'm responding to his response in another place. And it will be brief. It will be brief. It will tell us about O'Halloran, tell us about...
You responded to his. Who's the his?
Would the member tell us about O'Halloran, who broke the law with impunity and was handsomely rewarded?
1. There's a response to our Senate response. That's beyond our remit.
I will rule on 48.1 on the issue of relevance having regard to how your motion is crafted. Okay, so I uphold the objection.
I will end by saying that crime is a P&M problem and they must take ownership of crime. That has nothing to do with what was said in the Senate. It speaks to what we are talking about today, crime. Meanwhile, the cries of mothers, while we are talking, the cries of mothers of murdered children fall on deaf ears. The mother of Gabriel Dubari, allegedly murdered by her estranged husband on January 9th. Hear what this mother said, quote, "It is really, really bad. It is really out of control. You know, you're hearing about murders all over, but you do not think it would come home." The Guardian, 20th November 2019, a relative of the Grill King businessman Randy Neil Dwarika, said, quote, "People doing an honest living, law-abiding citizens are not safe anymore in this country. Nobody not safe at all here." These are the cries, Madam Speaker, of everyday citizens. It is clear to all that those on the other side have no plan, no vision, no will, no capacity to take us out of this dark hole. This administration is at a dead end. It is lost. It is floundering, making excuses. Madam Speaker, we need to set measurable targets on crime detection rates, police response times, murder reduction rates, lower recidivism rates, less bullying in schools. We need safe zones. Our children, our women, our elderly, our visitors must feel safe. This minister continues to operate without a vision, refuses to deal frontally with problems at hand, and this minister reshuffles his problem from one area to the next. This minister, his friend and mentor, the Honorable Attorney General, is even worse, Madam Speaker. Recently, the Honorable Attorney General, in his haste to appear that he's doing something about crime, proffered that the abolition of preliminary inquiries would eliminate over 25,000 cases from the magistrate's court. He had to be reminded publicly and forcibly that this would not bring relief, since it would lead to these matters being shifted to the office of the DPP, which is, as most institutions under this clueless administration, significantly under-resourced. Madam Speaker, on January 28, 2020, this clueless National Security Minister held a belated crime stakers meeting to discuss crime strategies. Minister Young said, and I quote, "We wanted to show that we were listening to the people," end of quote. Madam Speaker, are they serious? In the dying months of this administration, this clueless minister tells us that he's now listening. Who are they fooling? This is back-to-front government. You come prepared with a plan and a vision, you articulate the vision, you operationalize the vision, then you consult. You don't, after 4.5 years, ask stakeholders, what should we do, because we are lost and we are floundering. What was the point of that meeting? What new plans came out of it? What measurable targets were defined? What new strategies put in place? You know what, Madam Speaker? The nation witnessed that this Dr. Rowley-led administration making a public confession of failure. They do nothing, Madam Speaker, except talk, unmindful of the fact that performance beats old talk any day. The PNM's main concern is to hide its incompetence and ineptitude. During the same meeting, The National Security Minister said attendees wanted less front-page coverage of crime stories. He further stated, quote, "It's up to the media houses to decide," end of quote. Madam Speaker, have you ever heard such arrant nonsense? Ostrich-like, they wish to hide their abysmal failures. They cannot. We are seeing it. We are feeling it. Citizens of the country are feeling it. It's coming closer and closer at home. Days before the PR exercise, Madam Speaker, the Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Commerce pleaded with the minister to take a more serious approach to crime. It said the Minister of National Security, in his leadership role, this is the Chamber of Commerce speaking, must acknowledge that we are not just in a difficult situation, but in fact in a crisis regarding crime and do not have the luxury of time to deal with it, end of quote. It went on to say that the TTPS needs help and suggested that the government should seek assistance from its CARICOM partners who have been successful in dealing with crime. We say on this side, accept that you have failed and do the patriotic thing and make way for a UNC government that knows what it is doing. Madam Speaker, I will show you that under the leadership of the member for Siparia, we took steps, laudable steps, that were acknowledged by the IDB to deal with crime. Under the People's Partnership Government, serious crime was significantly reduced. After consistent efforts and an unrelenting commitment to take back our communities, by 2014, we recorded the lowest number of serious crimes in 31 years, Madam Speaker. Overall, serious crime was cut almost by half. Burglaries, robberies, car crimes went down by more than 50%. Drug crimes were down by more than 15%. Shootings down by 19%. And kidnappings down by 41%. That is performance. Madam Speaker, murders went down by a fifth. That is 20%. We can stand tall and proud that we have the answers on this side. We have the performance record, we have the track record, and we have competent people to manage the crime scourge in this country. Madam Speaker, we introduced the Rapid Response Unit, a counter-human trafficking unit, community comfort patrols.
Shut down.
I get into that. They shut down everything. 13 surveillance bays along major highways. We increased CCTV by 500 cameras. Opened 8 modern police stations. And countless other effective measures. I'll name some. I will name some, Madam Speaker. One, and I must give my colleague, Dr. Tim Gopi Singh, credit for the first one. The Student Support Services of the Ministry of Education implemented a bullying intervention program in 9 primary schools in Port of Spain. You remember that, my colleague? The National Parenting Program, an initiative of the Ministry of Gender, Youth, and Child Development, introduced a national parenting policy. Madam Speaker, we were ahead of the game. You know why we did that, Madam Speaker? Because you know what's different between us and them? And I go to the IDB. I go to the IDB for solace, Madam Speaker. It says, and I quote, however, crime prevention is now recognized as an indispensable component of any meaningful approach to dealing with crime. And it continues, while suppression was the primary response to crime in Trinidad and Tobago in the past, successive governments have recognized that this initiative has its place. Within the last decade, there have been a proliferation of preventative interventions, and an increasing, here the important point, an increasing recognition within state and non-state agencies that preventative approaches are just as important, or even more important than suppression approaches. They are into suppression. We are into prevention and suppression. Madam Speaker, here are some of the interventions we had. Defining Masculine Excellence Program. That was a program of the Ministry of Gender, Youth, and Child Development. Masculine excellence. Critical problem. In 2014, the Citizen Security Program received a loan from the IDB to expand this project from 20 to 30 at-risk communities. Its aim was to re-engineer the culture of gun violence in at-risk communities. We were going into the communities and doing the necessary hard work, not coming and holding gallery meetings with stakeholders to say, as the minister said, to give the impression that we are listening to them. Madam Speaker, from January to November 2013, we expanded operations of the Youth Micro-Entrepreneurship Program, giving young people hope. The Ministry of Justice was tasked with implementing the Prison Service Reform and Rehabilitation Program. And the Women's Institute of Alternative Development, and this was close to me, was a significant advocate at the UN for the passage of the Arms Trade Treaty. Madam Speaker, we had a holistic, all-embracing, comprehensive approach to crime solution. And you know what hurts Trinidad and Tobago? You know what hurts? The PNM destroyed these initiatives when they came into office. They axed community comfort patrols. They reduced allocations for programs aimed at re-engineering disadvantaged youth towards alternative lives. They failed to produce performance improvements in MILAT, MIPAT, Scouts, Police Youth Clubs, Cadets, 4-H clubs, and Boy Scouts. When you tell them we need to emphasize Scouts, all they do is put more Scout troops. You have to rethink and re-engineer the curriculum and the vision of the Scouted movement and the cadets. That takes a certain amount of brain, that takes a certain amount of intelligence, and that takes a certain amount of thought to make it happen. It does not reside on that side. Madam Speaker, the member for Laventille West, during a joint select committee on national security, said, and I quote, "It appears as though some members of the African community have fallen behind." And that was recorded in the Trinidad Express, February 2nd, 2020. But after all this old talk and urging our inner city youth to not lag behind, the facts tell a different story, Madam Speaker. Budget allocations for programs targeted at at-risk youth most times are not fully spent or inadequately resourced. Madam Speaker, I want to make a statement here today. They do not care about their support base in this country, Madam Speaker. They do not care about poor black youth who records show make up the bulk of the prison population. I'm not dog whistling today, I'm stating a fact. If the IDB could tell us that 76% of the prison population comprises black youth, inner city black youth, is it not the responsibility of those sides on that side to take responsibility, mentor, nurture, resource, re-engineer, and change? Madam Speaker, lazy people and they cannot say, I would be ashamed, Madam Speaker, if the kinds of crime existed in Naparima. I would call the parents, call the churches. I would be talking to the member for Lopino, Bonnet West, now the member for Aruka Maloney, who's handling family services. Come into Naparima and help. Madam Speaker, look, the Crime and Problem Analysis Branch of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Police station districts with the highest number of murders between 2006 and 2013, and 2009 and 2013. The biggest, Belmont. Oh, heaven's sake, you are their constituents. They elected you for hope.
They are your constituents.
They are your constituents. Sorry, I get emotional, Madam Speaker. They are your constituents. They are looking to you for salvation and hope. And somebody has to tell the PNM that they have a responsibility to young black males in Trinidad and Tobago at this time who are crying out for help, for heaven's sake. Besson Street Police, 21% of crime, murders, 21, Besson Street. Morvan, Arima, West End, St. Joseph, Belmont, Barataria, Aruka, the list goes on and on and on. And they have no shame on that side. No shame, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I spoke about not resourcing the institutions in those area communities that need help. Madam Speaker, the Morvan Lavantil Initiative, $2 million budgeted in 2018. Only $386,000 spent. Police youth clubs, $6 billion budgeted in 2018, $1.6 billion spent. And they come and cry crocodile tears. We love the people who support us. Shame on you. YTEP, from $55 million spent in 2018, $10 million budgeted in 2020. Youth apprenticeship program in agriculture, $500,000 allocated. Nothing spent in 2018, nothing in 2019. Shame on you. 4-H clubs, a measly $33,000 spent out of $400,000 allocated in 2018. Does that show caring? Does that show empathy? Does that show concern? Madam Speaker, the National Mentorship Program under the Ministry of Sports, $2.3 budgeted for 2018. Nothing spent. Not one red cent spent. And this is a government that claims that they're interested in youth. The PNM is the problem. They are not the solution. I am not dog whistling today. They have failed their supporters. They have failed inner city youth. And I specifically mean this PNM. This wasn't the PNM of Eric Williams. This Rowley-led PNM have failed young black men, period. You cannot spend $126,000 on the Scout movement, $126,000 on the Scout movement, and $198 million on the SSA in 2020, and say that you are concerned about youth, Madam Speaker. The money talks. All the SSA does because they cannot give us the intelligence on the gangs, because they would be able to anticipate what they're doing and stop them in their actions, in their tracks. All they're doing is spying on the opposition so that they can come and say who getting locked up and who ain't getting locked up tomorrow. Do your work. Madam Speaker, I want to make this point to Trinidad and Tobago. You see, it has to do with the transcendental mission of members of Parliament. You cannot, and I'm speaking specifically to my colleagues, you cannot attempt to criminalize a young man from Beetham whose main fault was that he did not know how to express his utter disgust at poor representation by his MP. Madam Speaker, that should be a teachable moment for any MP who cares about his constituents. But here, you take the gallery and you lock them up and you get on the press. Teach the young boy, he needs help. I plead with you. You cannot close down Petrotrin. and be totally blind to the ripple effects of unemployment in the line in Pointe-à-Pierre and Batu Avenue in Marabella. You have failed your supporters. We looked after the interests of inner city black youths better than you. And the IAD and the Inter-American Development Bank knows it. You know, it reminds me of the late Maki Padmore. The week before he died, he made this statement on Power 102. And I must get it. He said, we love the PNM, but the PNM does not love us. That was the late Maki Padmore's statement. It was made just before he died. It had to be last year, a year ago. This PNM. This PNM, Madam Speaker, is like a fish out of water when it comes to fighting crime. This PNM is unable to restrain violence at every level, in homes, between spouses, on the streets, in temples, in mosques, at churches, everywhere you go. We have a Minister of National Security who takes no ownership for increasing crime. With 88 murders in 56 days and rapidly increasing, he sees no issue at all. Ending in 2018 with 516 murders and 2019 with 538 murders, and heading in 2020 for a record forecast. Pontius Pilate, worse than the member for Point 14, who did a better job as Minister of National Security, based on his performance record and the murder rate. Minister Dillon, we apologize to you. We didn't think it could get worse. It has. Here, the Minister of National Security. Here, Trinidad and Tobago, listen. Quote, I don't for a moment have to have an excuse as to why crime is existing and what is going on with respect to crime. At the end of the day, I am not responsible for crime. That is the Minister of National Security, handsomely paid and confessing that he is not responsible for crime. Well, if you're not responsible, get out. Resign. Having produced no results in the last 4 years, crime could never be their first priority. Minister Dillon said, and The Guardian, is reported in The Guardian, October 11, 2015, this government sees fighting crime as the #1 priority. That's what they said. Now in their 5th year, they are attempting to get the Chinese to construct a forensic science center. They say it will be fully accredited. But can we believe them? Can we believe them? They have no crime plan. Their detection rate is abysmally low. No solutions. And don't tell them about police response times. And never ask for commitments on reducing the murder rate. They always know, but can never act. Speaking in Parliament, while discussing the Interception of Communications Amendment Bill 2020, the Attorney General said an attempted assassination was made from within the prison as recently as Tuesday, 11 February. He said legislation is needed in order to enforce more efficient crime-fighting techniques, end of quote. Here we go again. Here we go again. Anytime you have a problem, pass a law. Madam Speaker, the Attorney General's solution I am presuming here, the Attorney General's solution to a child wetting his bed would most likely be passing a law prohibiting bedwetting and making it a non-bailable criminal offense subject to fines of $1 million and or 10 years in prison. But the IDB tells us it is not about suppression and laws. It is about prevention. Prevention. And don't tell me, because I have never lost every case before the Privy Council. If this government was serious on dealing with the issue of cell phones, Madam Speaker, in the prisons, this would have been dealt with since 2016. What has happened to the talk about jammers and other internal security measures? Oh, no, lazy. We're not doing that. Pass a law. Come to Parliament and waste our time, Madam Speaker. The Attorney General claimed that he had the names, the whereabouts, the alleged activities of 2,459 suspected gang members nationwide. They were known to the authorities since 2017. Why was nothing done to intercept and disrupt them except for passing laws? We are told by the AG that the Anti-Crime Act would give the government a fighting chance in the war on crime. Clearly, was just that the member was just gallerying, as he constantly does. How many gang members have been convicted? How many? Don't tell me about charged. In our system, they're innocent until proven guilty. But, Madam Speaker, we need to focus on rehabilitative justice rather than youths being convicted for life sentences. We have a government focused on jailing more and more of our inner city males and our able-bodied citizens, constantly overcrowding our prisons. Madam Speaker, on a per capita basis, we have more prisoners than China, Colombia, Jamaica, Iraq, Syria, and Mexico. Shame, shame, shame on a per capita basis. On every front they have failed. I challenge them to name one tangible success in the war on crime. They talk about our borders being locked down, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Newsday reported that there are currently 91 illegal ports of entry to the security, known to the security forces. In July 2018, the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, told reporters that there were 140 illegal ports of entry in Trinidad and 19 in Tobago. So it jumped from 91 to 140 plus 19. And the National Security Minister, Minister Stuart Young, has since put the number at 240. You know, the left hand don't even know what the right hand knows about how many illegal ports of entry. What we do know is that as we stand today, they are coming into our country and populating our country, and the government doesn't have a clue of how to stop them, or a clue as to how many are in our country. Madam Speaker, and they talk about OPVs. 10 OPVs under this Rowley-led administration would not solve our border issues. Those are offshore vessels, expensive to maintain, and they operate in the 200-mile exclusive economic zones. But, Madam Speaker, the waters between Trinidad and Venezuela are visible to the eye. We do not need offshore patrol vessels. We need fast patrol vessels that are present and can intercept and outrun the migrant-loaded vessels and those coming in with drugs, arms, and ammunition. What is needed is better management of the Coast Guard, adequate resources for our modern fleet of Coast Guard vessels which we supplied, and our commitment to perform rather than talk. Why are there instances where fishermen are under attack and they're nowhere to be found? And we have the case yesterday in Otahiti. Where are our radar systems? Are they functional? Where are the 14 Coast Guard interceptors which Minister Young promised? Where are the 12 high-performance naval vessels we left them? Tied up in Stobbles Bay, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, their incompetence is embarrassing. It is embarrassing. They have failed on national security, and under their watch, our education system, which is supposed to stop the pipeline of males to the prisons, it is crumbling. There are issues plaguing our schools, bullying, and we saw how we dealt, how the erudite, high-performing Minister Tim Gopi Singh, how we dealt with that in a manner that was complimented by the IDB. What are they doing about bullying in schools? Sexual misconduct, physical violence, peer pressure, and the lack of male role models in the teaching system. You have schools with 97% of the teachers female. Where does the role model? Where can these men get the role model? Madam Speaker, we left them with everything. We left them with the plan. We left them with the strategy. We left them with targets, and they killed all. They killed all. And we left them with, I always say, how much? The Heritage Fund, $6 billion, and in reserves 10 million, 17 billion, 17,000 million US. Madam Speaker, I get vexed. In this day and age, you have no repurposed cadet force in secondary school in at-risk areas. Madam Speaker, the Arima Secondary School, none in the Arima Secondary School. 25 murders in Arima for 2019, 10 so far for 2020, but none in the Arima Secondary School. I challenge the Minister of Education to tell me I'm wrong. La Romaine High School, 7 murders in 2018, none. Union Claxton Bay Senior Comprehensive, none. Marabella North Secondary, none. Pleasantville's Comprehensive, none. Even at the primary level, Madam Speaker, no scouts in Laventille Boys Government. What is the member for Laventille West doing? Shame! Shame! No guides for girls in Laventille Girls Government School. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Education himself, hear what the minister said, and he's a learned fellow. I respect him, he's a friend, so it has to be a misquote. They say fighting in schools is inevitable and part of growing up. In growing up, boys in particular would have to fight as a means of establishing themselves. Not only has the PNM failed our males, but we are seeing a pattern of increased violence among our girls, Madam Speaker. The PNM destroys everything, you know. They destroy man, woman, and child, and who are killed and who are dead, badly wounded, Madam Speaker. How can we deal with school violence with one guidance officer, on average 3 primary schools?
4 minutes.
When the ratio of officers per school right now is 1 to 500, it should be 1 to 250. Conclusion, Madam Speaker. Others on this side will speak to our crime-fighting strategies. Madam Speaker, and Trinidad and Tobago will know that they made a mistake in 2015 in electing that incompetent bunch of clueless administrators. We will seek, after discussions with stakeholders, including the TTPS, to set realistic targets for reducing murder rates by an agreed percentage annually. This is my leader. We talk about targets, boy. We talk about performance benchmarks. We talk about best practices. They talk about blaming us about corruption. That is their thing. We will ensure that the present 2% of the budget allocations for such line items as cadets, schools, sports, 4-H clubs, etc., will be increased to a specified targeted figure within an acceptable time frame. It is immoral to spend 97% of the budget on crime suppression and locking up people, and only 3% on educating them, re-engineering them, providing changes for them. We will revise our school curricula to emphasize civic-mindedness, commitment to social norms, women empowerment, a more empathetic role for males, and developing alternative ways of dealing crime.
Members, I want to hear the member for Naparima. Please continue, member for Naparima.
Just a minute. We will ensure that our borders are completely locked down and the Forensic Science Center and the DPP's office are fully resourced and given performance targets based on international benchmarks. We will make Trinidad and Tobago safe again. God will not leave Trinidad and Tobago to suffer under this wicked PNM led by a clueless and uncaring Prime Minister. There is no hope for us under Dr. Keith Rowley and his band of bungling ministers. They will come after me and say all kind of nonsense. They will not address the fundamental issues that I've raised. This inept Prime Minister must now take shame, if he has any, do the honorable thing and resign forthwith and call elections now. I beg to move, Madam Speaker.
Member for Saburia.
Madam, I beg to second the motion moved by my honourable colleague and reserve the right to speak. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, the motion being seconded, I shall now propose the question for debate. Be it resolved that this House condemns this government for its failure to deal with rampant crime. Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on reflection over a period of time, and in particular following the ramblings and the public utterances from those on the other side with respect to crime, I've accepted that when you take on crime, you take on corruption, and you take on the status quo of criminality, meaning that you take the fight to them fearlessly, what it will inevitably lead to is that you would be subject to the most vicious of attacks and personal attacks on your character if you don't participate in the same manner as those who engage in corruption, criminality, and those intent on protecting the status quo of a continuation of those elements. I'd like to start today's contribution, Madam Speaker, by thanking all of the men and women in Trinidad and Tobago Police Service or Defense Force or traffic wardens, the fire services, all of the arms of national security, including our intelligence services, for what I've seen described by the Commissioner of Police as the safest carnival ever. Because you see, Madam Speaker, after all of the ramblings, all of the misinformation, and sometimes, unfortunately, the untruths, the fact is that the Carnival of 2020 and the Carnival of 2019 were amongst the safest in Trinidad and Tobago, and I thank the men and women for that. I'll also go on to say, Madam Speaker, that it is useless saying that we should not politicize crime. It is obvious that the opposition has decided since 2015 to do so. The UNC's strategy, Madam Speaker, obvious to the population of Trinidad and Tobago and those beyond our shores looking on, has been to fearmonger, to scare people, to spread misinformation, and, importantly, in this House and the other place, to slow down and, in some cases, to blatantly block various initiatives to combat criminal activity. The opposition has been intent since 2015 to block initiatives to tackle the issues related to crime and criminality, and one must wonder why. So unfortunately, Madam Speaker, but not surprisingly, the opposition's obvious strategy is to politicize crime. But you see, the question that the population are asking, Madam Speaker, is a very simple one. The question that the population are asking, and especially the civic-minded and right-thinking members of the population are asking now, is how far is the UNC opposition willing to go to promote crime? Because you see, Madam Speaker, crime is not a new phenomenon. In fact, a lot of the crime and the criminality that we are currently facing and dealing with is as a result of years of certain actions and inactions which have culminated in what we as citizens and as a society face today. Madam Speaker, without a doubt, we are reaping what was sown many years ago, and in particular during the period of 2010 to 2015. We are dealing with the results of certain very deliberate actions taken in 2010 to 2015, and actions which continue to be taken by members of the UNC hierarchy up to today. Actions which continue to be taken by members of the UNC hierarchy up to today in their collaboration and their communications with those in the criminal world. Madam Speaker, it is undeniable, irrefutable fact that the difficulties faced today in the fight against crime, including the disturbing murder rate in Trinidad and Tobago, is as a direct result of the actions and inactions of the past. The murder rate rightly concerns every civic-minded and right-thinking citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, and it has been increasing. The tool of trade for the vast majority of murders in Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker, is the firearm. The use of illegal firearms, Madam Speaker, contribute to over 80% of the murders in Trinidad and Tobago. Over 80% of the murders of Trinidad and Tobago are being carried out by those who are engaged in criminal gang activity in one form or the other. So immediately one must ask, what do you do to tackle the scourge of illegal firearms and the scourge of gang activity? And what do we do as parliamentarians to tackle that? And I'd like to start, Madam Speaker, by reference to certain information that was provided to a Joint Select Committee on National Security by none other than the Commissioner of Police recently in a report that was laid only today. And what the Commissioner of Police says to the population, Madam Speaker, is, and this is very important, because all of the screams and the shouts and the rants and the raves are designed to camouflage and to sweep under the carpet this important information. The Commissioner of Police has told the population via a Joint Select Committee in a report laid today that there was a reduction in every violent crime, inclusive of homicides, between 8 to 15% from August 2018 to August 2019. Pause. What is the relevance of August 2018? The first thing you do is you put in place leadership. The first thing you do, Madam Speaker, in the fight against criminality is you ensure there is permanent leadership. The body constitutionally charged with dealing with crime in Trinidad and Tobago is the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. In August 2018, this government appointed a permanent commissioner of police, regardless of his previous curriculum, his previous CV. And I want to remind the population that even though the current commissioner of police, who is doing an excellent job, was a former advisor to the member for Siparia as Prime Minister and a former Minister of National Security for the UNC government, she's now, the member for Siparia is now shouting across the floor, he's a good soul. But I remind the population today through you, Madam Speaker, when we came to this House to elect and select a permanent commissioner of police, not a single soul in the opposition, not a single member of the opposition supported the commissioner of police. But the member, and the member for Siparia, let us remind the population, screaming he's a good fella, fired Gary Griffith. Fired Gary Griffith for telling the truth. Fired Gary Griffith for telling the truth in protection of an Attorney General who is now before the criminal courts, her Attorney General, in 2 sets of criminal charges. And that is the UNC plan for crime. The UNC plan for crime speaks on the record to the population of Trinidad and Tobago. Members of cabinet, don't tell the truth. If you tell the truth, be fired, because I'm going to protect an Attorney General who is now before the criminal courts with 2 sets of criminal charges. To get back to what the Commissioner of Police is telling the population, there was a reduction of every violent crime, inclusive of homicides, between 8 to 15% from August 2018 to August 2019. I became the Minister of National Security on the 6th of August 2018. So a year later, the murder rate and all serious violent crimes had been reduced by 8 to 15%. The next thing is that in the first 6 months of 2019, Madam Speaker, this is according to the Commissioner of Police, there was a 12 to 13% decrease. So everything was going well in 2019. The trajectory was going well. It was heading downwards. So the question the population must then ask is what happened? The question the population must then ask is, who is it that stands to benefit from an increase in crime and an increase in murder in Trinidad and Tobago? So having not supported the appointment of a permanent commissioner of police, and I'll also remind the population, in fulfillment of one of our manifesto promises, by December 2015, we had laid in this House, Madam Speaker, an order to simplify the appointment of a commissioner of police. And who was it that went and challenged that? And the only success they had was that that order said that the Minister of National Security must trigger the process. Common sense, because at the end of the day, the government is being held responsible for crime and the fight against crime. So the government then said, well, we will start the process for the simplifying of the appointment of a commissioner of police. The courts found there should be no government involvement in terms of starting the process. It was taken out, the process started, and we ended up finally with a permanent commissioner of police in August 2018 without a single vote of support by his former colleagues, the members on the other side. Let's get back to illegal firearms. Because if 77 to over 80% of murders are committed through the use of illegal firearms, what do you do about it? So in 2012 to 2015, the then government passed two important pieces of legislation. And you have the current Commissioner of Police saying that is one of the main pillars of what helped him when he was the Minister of National Security in the reduction of murders. Anti-gang legislation and bail amendments. The bail amendments, Madam Speaker, are bail amendments targeting specifically anyone found in possession of illegal firearms. We met the most vociferous of opposition when we came now, as the government, to continue those two pieces of legislation. The opposition, the UNC opposition, told the population of Trinidad and Tobago they will not support anti-gang legislation. It was on 2 or 3 occasions they told the population they will not support it. It is when the population screamed that you need to have bipartisan support to tackle the scourge of gang activity, the opposition finally capitulated and supported. I'll come to that in a short while. Currently, over 80% of the murders in Trinidad and Tobago are being committed through the use of illegal firearms. And I ask again, because the population asked this question, Madam Speaker, through you, why would any person have in his or her possession an illegal firearm? A firearm is designed to kill. The sole purpose of a firearm, Madam Speaker, is to kill someone. Why would anyone have possession of an illegal firearm? So we came to the Parliament with legislation to deal with it at the request of those charged with the constitutional responsibility of arresting crime. Because none of us in here, apart from performing a citizen's arrest, which I'm sometimes very tempted to do, can arrest anyone, or can charge anyone, or can prosecute anyone. That is the purpose of the police. The police have asked, if you're calling upon us to bring down the murder rate, and over 80% are being committed through the use of illegal firearms, when we catch the perpetrators in possession of these weapons of death, do not permit them bail. Again, the opposition in typical form refused to support that. The bail amendment bill was then reformed, and it was permitted only if you have prior convictions. You'd then be not permitted bail. As we've heard the Commissioner of Police say repeatedly in the past few weeks, the number of shooters in Trinidad and Tobago who are repeat offenders in possession of firearms is astronomical. The Commissioner of Police has gone so far as to say, if these persons who the police have caught and charged and locked up were kept off of the streets, he would have been able to bring down the murder rate by half. So let the population understand the implication of that. And all we can do in this House and in the other places, I say repeatedly, is pass legislation. That is what we come here to do. But we're faced with an opposition that is resolute. They wouldn't support it. So it was watered down. Another thing that the Commissioner of Police has said very, very clearly to the Parliament is the type of firearms being utilized now are going to result in murder. The type of firearms being used now, the AR-15s that use a 5.56 round and the AK-47s that use a 7.62 round are weapons of war. These are not meant for civilian use. The vast majority of our police officers do not even have access to these weapons. These now are in the hands of criminals, and I'll get to why in a short while. But the Commissioner of Police has said another reason for the increase in the murders, because the number of shootings has gone down, is the type of weapons and the rounds being used. So we came to Parliament and we said anyone found in possession of an automatic firearm, an AR-15 and an AK-47, with these types of rounds should not be granted bail. Only for 120 days, the police will start the case and they proceed with the case. The opposition again has been resolute in saying they will not support that legislation. One must question, and the population are questioning, why? Why is it that the opposition, the UNC opposition, wants persons to be in possession of automatic firearms? And these are the firearms that are driving up the murder rate. So answer the population here today. Why is anyone found with an automatic firearm, a machine gun, an AR-15, or any incendiary device or bomb, a hand grenade, should be allowed bail? Because that is what the UNC opposition is telling the population. So don't call upon the Commissioner of Police and the men and women in the police service to reduce murders if you're not prepared to help them take those who are committing the murders off of the street. Do not stand here and in other places outside with the hypocrisy just to politicize crime and just to attack the Minister of National Security and to attack the Chairman of the National Security Council, as the member for Naparima started to attack the Honorable Prime Minister, the Minister of National Security, the Attorney General, and the other members of Cabinet, saying, what are we doing? The first thing we should do is no bail for those with automatic firearms. But no, the opposition are the only ones in the country who see it fit that murderers, shooters in criminal gangs should continue to be permitted access to these weapons of war unimpeded. The small island next door to us of Barbados, with a population of less than 200,000 people, have taken a decision and have said no bail for anyone found with any illegal firearm for 2 years. That is how you deal with a rising murder rate. But what do the opposition sit here and do? No, they will not support that. But when they were in government, the PNM opposition supported the anti-gang legislation as well as the bail amendments. I remind the population. So, allow persons to continue to be in possession of weapons of war and other illegal firearms, and don't expect it to affect the murder rate. The anti-gang legislation, very often we hear it being bandied about because you see, the population pressured the opposition to support for the passage of the anti-gang legislation. Again, the member for Siparia laughs, but we will all recall that we came here in under 6 months. They voted against it twice. The opposition then said, when the public outcry became too much, bring it to Parliament, come to Parliament, shorten the time frame of 6 months, and we will support it. You see, facts are a stubborn thing, and that is exactly what happened. So the anti-gang legislation is in place. So now the cry is, before anyone was charged, well, it's not being used. Again, the population is smarter than that. It is not retroactive, so the investigations had to begin at that point. And I am happy to see that since the anti-gang legislation has been in place, there have been a number of significant criminals charged. So now the cry is for conviction, but conviction is not in the police's hands, nor is it in this executive's hands. They may have persons in the judiciary who they can get to do what needs to be done. We don't operate that way, Madam Speaker.
People in the judiciary to do their bidding. He's attacking the judiciary and attacking us.
Member for Portisby, North St. Anne's West, I would uphold and ask you to state that.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Withdrawn. Madam Speaker, the point is that all the police can do is detect crime, investigate crime, and charge persons for crime. And that is what has happened under the anti-gang legislation. But you see, Madam Speaker, some of the people that were charged under the anti-gang legislation recently included persons being charged for being gang leaders. And one of those persons who was charged and is now out on bail once again is someone that certain members of Parliament on the other side may be very familiar with. He is very familiar with the person. So, Madam Speaker, this anti-gang legislation is being utilized by Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Major gang leaders have been charged. Up to the last week, police officers have also been charged under the anti-gang legislation, because our mantra is no one is above the law. And every step of this PNM administration since 2015 has shown that there has not been any interference in any police investigation. There has not been any interference in the police's work. So gang members have in fact been charged. There is multi-agency work being done under the anti-gang legislation. Because you see, it's not only about the charges, it also provides specific powers and very different express powers to those who are in law enforcement and in intelligence. And there will be more charges to come, I can assure the population. The next problem that you have is with respect occasionally to the prisons. And yes, you can use jammers to an extent with the prisons. But anyone who does any research, and I used it in the other place in a debate on the amendments currently being proposed for the Interception of Communications Act, in the United States and in Europe and in every country where there are prisons, there are reports that there are still contraband cell phones and other modes of communication being utilized by prisoners in prison. We are no different. So what do? Again, to tackle that scourge, we come here, Madam Speaker, to Parliament to pass legislation to criminalize. That is what the legislation is for, Madam Speaker. The population needs to know that this interception of communication amendment being proposed is to criminalize conversations with prisoners who are incarcerated and utilizing contraband phones. I saw a few days ago the member of opposition being quoted in a Newsday article saying that the opposition will not support that. So again, on behalf of the right-thinking and civic-minded citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, I ask the opposition why they would not support the criminalizing of prisoners who are incarcerated speaking on cell phones to persons on the outside. Because that is a question, that is a pertinent question. So, and as my colleague, member for Diego Martin Northeast is whispering to me, it may be for personal reasons. It may be for personal reasons because deputy political leaders of the opposition like to have conversations with those prisoners. Obviously. So again, Madam Speaker, through you, I put the population on notice that if you're really serious about tackling crime, and not only rah-rah and screaming and shouting, but really tackling crime fearlessly, on the premise that no one is above the law. Why is it that the opposition would not support bail amendments to stop persons from being in possession of automatic firearms? Why is it that the opposition would not support legislation to criminalize prisoners having cell phones and communicating with those on the outside? We heard a short while ago, Madam Speaker, the rambling and rantings as to what the UNC's crime plans were, what they utilized when they were in government, what it is they did in government, and what they hope to do at some point in the future, hopefully never granted by the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. But I'd like to remind the population at this stage, Madam Speaker, through you, of the initiatives utilized by the United National Congress when they were in power between 2010 and 2015. What is it that they did in the arena of crime or crime fighting? Probably crime. The first thing they did, or one of the first initiatives, was destroy facial recognition. Get rid of facial recognition at our airports. Great crime initiative. The question is why? And that great crime initiative, of course, is sarcastic. The second thing they did is attack and destroy our intelligence services. Destroy the SSA, destroy the SIA, get rid of people, appoint Rishmi Ramnarayan, but also let the country not forget they dismantled the equipment that was being utilized. The same Denny that they put on a platform, one of the allegations against them was what happened to the servers that were being used for intelligence. Why were the servers dismantled and destroyed? That is not how you deal with crime. It has all been rebuilt under this administration. The next great UNC crime initiative was to dismantle and destroy SORT, S-A-U-T-T. SORT is regarded by all persons in law enforcement as being one of the most successful crime-fighting initiatives, because what it was, Madam Speaker, was a gathering together of multi-agency men and women, specially trained, who were vetted. They passed polygraph tests on an ongoing basis. They did their jobs to the best of their ability, and crime was going down. One of the first, they brought in training from all over the world, Scotland Yard officers, FBI officers. When you go up to Komuto and you see the facilities built by the PNM, it is built exactly as the best facilities in England and the United States are built. And let the population not forget that between 2010 and 2015, the UNC dismantled that organization, cost the population millions of dollars in damages. They don't like to hear about the cancellation of the OPVs. We'll get to border security, but that is a fact, and those OPVs are now the pride of the Brazilian Navy. So again, why would you not want to protect your borders? Why would you not want to protect your maritime borders? And I heard it being suggested by the last speaker. Tell us about the interceptors. Tell us about the vessels we left. I will get in a short while to tell the population, or to remind the population, there was absolutely no maintenance or proper maintenance in 2010 to 2015 of the 6 hostile fast patrol vessels. So by the time we came into government, those vessels could not be used anymore. The interceptors that have been working so hard to try and get back into the water were not maintained by the UNC. The question is, why would they not maintain these assets? We have gotten the engines, but some of the difficulties we're facing now is because of the lack of maintenance of those vessels previously. They are not being able to stand the rigors of use. We have ordered 2 hostile Cape-class vessels. Fortunately, they're on their way this year. The next great initiative, in the motion, Madam Speaker, it talks about whole of government approach. I want to utilize at this juncture, Madam Speaker, the opportunity to remind the population what the UNC's reference to a whole of government approach in the fight against crime is. It is a program called Live Sport. The UNC's sole program for whole of government approach to promote crime was live sport. And you ask anyone in intelligence or in law enforcement now what we're dealing with, and the seeds that were sown in live sport are what the country is reaping now. It was over 400 million, almost 500 million paid to criminal enterprise. $400 million in a live sport program paid to criminal enterprise that sprung up the whole Carapo and all along the east-west corridor, these pockets of criminals.
Honourable Member, your original speaking time is now spent. You're entitled to 15 minutes to wrap up your contribution.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So that is the seed that was sown. That is the answer to crime and criminality. Because you see, one of the reasons or one of the ways you may suppress crime is if you decide to pay criminals. And that is something that we will refuse to do. So the live sport program not only was that, but what it had is, remember, people were murdered coming out of that program. Remember, people were murdered in that program. The prisons. This one is a pet peeve of mine, Madam Speaker, and forgive me as I repeat it. But even this morning, as I was going to the east for the handing over of certain disaster management equipment, I had to see it again. An $80 million fence around nothing. Let the people of Trinidad and Tobago remember this. Their prison reform, the UNC's prison reform, was to spend $80 million on a fence that there is nothing in the middle of. It is not around any prison. But we as a cabinet, in times of little, and I thank my cabinet colleagues for this, on the first occasion, gave their full support, approval, and confirmation for us to spend $26 million to build a fence around the whole Golden Grove prison. Wow. The remand, the women's prison, YTC. And that is what they should have done. 26 million versus 80 million spent around nothing. Worse than that, $300 million spent on the purchase of a warehouse with less than 8% of the square footage of the warehouse being utilized as a prison. Explain that. $300 million in cash spent. That was the UNC initiative. Rather than spend that to fix remand, rather to spend that on improving our prisons, they spent it to buy a warehouse and use less than 8% of the square footage. The failed state of emergency. These are some, not all, but some of what we faced coming out of 2015. Let us talk about what has happened now since 2015 and what it is we're working on. Border security, because we have to stop the illegal flow of firearms. We have improved the coastal radar system, and it is being upgraded. It is working and being upgraded. It was not upgraded during their tenure. We have ordered 2 Cape-class vessels. We are working on and restoring and properly maintaining the Coast Guard vessels that are here. Because you see, again, any forward-thinking government would have gotten facilities in Trinidad and Tobago to maintain the Damon vessels, but no. Typical UNC style, enter into an arrangement where the vessels can only be maintained by Damon even after the warranty period is over, and you have to go to shipyards outside of Trinidad and Tobago. And I remind the population, the procurement of those vessels is now under international criminal investigation by the government of the Netherlands. The UNC procurement of vessels, the Damon vessels, is now under international criminal investigation by the government of the Netherlands. We also put scanners in the ports. We fought hard, got it done. The multi-agency approach is being utilized on our borders, and it is being used successfully. The restoration of the interceptors, I said a short while ago, is happening. The ballistics and forensics. We are the ones as an administration that told the Americans we will have re-established and properly populated by the people they spent millions of dollars training, the CERU unit, Special Evidence Recovery Unit. That is back in place. It was dismantled by the UNC. So again, Why would they not want that unit to be operational after the Americans spent millions of dollars training certain officers? The CCTV, well, I'm glad that was raised. I want to remind the population, and we heard the member for Naparima talk about how they increased the CCTV cameras. Let me just quickly give a history of the CCTV cameras. So it came in 2009 under the Manning administration at very sensible cost. What was happening is the Ministry of National Security bought the equipment, TSTT established the network. So in 2009, 389 cameras put in place. March 23rd, 2010, Ministry of National Security entered into another contract with TSTT for the provision of fiber optic connectivity for 18 cameras, again purchased by the ministry, and then deployed an additional 41 cameras. It all went awry after that. So in 2011, Madam Speaker, what you had was then 18 cameras being added for surveillance bays along the highway by the Ministry of Works at a cost per month of $11,250 a camera. In 2013, a further expansion of 500 cameras, again at a cost of $11,250 a camera. This is per month. So every month, the contracts entered into under the UNC for these cameras were costing us $11,250 a camera. They then went for an additional, they meaning the UNC, 800 cameras in 2015 at $14,060 a camera. What we did with a lot of struggle, because when you have a contract that inflated, certain people will not want the disruption of status quo. We finally got the RFP out, we finally got the proposals in, and we went with a provider that is saving the country $310 million per annum versus what the UNC put the country in. And these cameras are state-of-the-art, facial recognition, license plate recognition. We also negotiated and are currently utilizing some free cameras to use with our NOFC. So that is how we do it. The multi-agency approach is working. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, our Defense Force, prisons, and intelligence services working together, and it is bearing fruit. It takes some time. When things are dismantled and then they're reconstructed and reconfigured, it takes time. For the first time, they had a vision of a national operations center, spent $500 million of taxpayers' money, no financing in place. One of the first crises we faced as a National Security Council coming in was, where do we find $500 million to pay the contractors and the suppliers of the equipment for the NOC? No plan, no financing, nothing in place. The National Operation Fusion Center, as it now will be, is operational. The equipment is working and it is being populated. The technology has been updated at no additional cost to the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. We are soon to introduce a NIFC, National Intelligence Fusion Center. It shocked me coming into office that there had never been one central intelligence unit in the whole of Trinidad and Tobago. So for the first time, this country is having introduced a National Intelligence Fusion Center, which will be similar to the JTAC out of England, which is the Joint Terrorism Analysis Center, which is an all-source intelligence organization. Madam Speaker, the reformation of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has also been happening since August 2018. We took certain decisions. In the new structure of the police service, there's for the first time a white-collar crime division. A white-collar crime division, and we've transferred the Anti-Crime Investigation Bureau, the ACIB, back from the Attorney General's office to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. We're boosting the cyber and social media unit. The Operational Command Center under the police service is fully functional. The technology has been increased and improved. For the first time, we have a Central Intelligence Bureau in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. that pulls together the SIU, which is comprised of the former OCIU, the Organized Crime and Intelligence Unit, the Human Trafficking Unit, Terrorism Investigation Unit, and Gang Enforcement Team. We've also introduced and revamped, the ERP patrols. We are now currently restoring the police hospital. We introduced SORT, S-O-R-T, a specially vetted team. They are now working with MOPS. We introduced a gender-based violence unit. The Child Protection Unit and the Victim Witness Support Unit are working. The Commissioner of Police was told by this administration, by none other than the Chairman of the National Security Council, the Prime Minister, that he would have this government's full support in rooting out corruption in the police service. And what has that resulted in? 70 police officers charged in the period 1st of August 2018 to the 27th of February 2020. We've also, as I said a short while ago, had recent police officers being charged all the way up to acting inspector, acting sergeant by the Child Protection Unit and our counter-trafficking unit for human trafficking. That is something we're tackling. The use of GPS in ERPs, our operational command center that is working. We got gratis from the Chinese 200 patrol bikes. New state-of-the-art Trinidad and Tobago police stations at Sherburne Road, Roxborough. Another one being constructed in Carenage, one in St. Clair. Non-fatal devices being utilized for the first time. Tasers. What's that? 2 separate police stations in Tobago for those on the other side who may not understand. The Sherburne Road police station and then the Roxborough police station. Right? Also, body cams are being used. And in fact, we gave body cams to the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force for the use in Carnival. And it fed back to the National Operation Fusion Center, a child protection unit, a gender-based violence unit. The Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, Madam Speaker. Again, how we dealt with it is we appointed in our tenure 3 permanent Chief of Defense Staff. It wasn't an extension and a buyout of leave of some Chief of Defense Staffs. And the current Chief of Defense Staff has years to go to give the service, the Defense Force, the ability to ground itself. This weekend, we launched the new air unit. And I don't have much time, but just to speak about the helicopters. Because you see, what we came in and met, Madam Speaker, as an administration, was astronomical cost to the taxpayers for helicopters. The UNC purchased 3 helicopters, one of which could not even come to Trinidad, and the taxpayers were paying $200,000 US a month to park up in a hangar in Delaware. The Attorney General under the UNC administration took out the termination clause in these contracts, so the taxpayers were stuck with these helicopters they could not use. They also in 2014 negotiated salaries that were astronomical. What did we do? We took on the difficulty. We are now saving over $250,000 a month on pilot cost alone. We have reduced those bills. We have 2 of the helicopters back up, and we will deal with the AW139s. Initiatives being used. The cadet force is operational with over 70 cadet forces deployed throughout Trinidad and Tobago. The CCC and MILAT programs, we did a tracer study to understand the benefits and then took a decision as a cabinet to increase the intake in these programs. We have over 8,000 members in the police youth clubs that were expanded. We are about to launch the youth development and apprenticeship centers. We transferred both the Chatham and the Persto Presto centers to national security. The Persto Presto center has been repurposed for the utilization of females between the age of 15 to 18, and Chatham would be used for males between the age of 15 to 18. These are some of the initiatives. I spoke about the launching soon of a program based along the lines of cure violence, because we are getting down on the ground. We're going to have people going into the communities and to deal with it. I heard the shallow and useless talk and conversation about the consultation with stakeholders. That was at their request. That was at the business community's request to meet with the heads of national security. As I've said many times before, the empty vessel makes the most noise. The empty vessel is the one who meets with them. So, Madam Speaker, these are the things that are being done by this administration. In national security, there's some things that you cannot talk about, there's some things that you cannot tell the population about, but I assure the population that the men and women in national security are working, they're working hard and they're working overtime, and they will continue to do all that they can, as the Commissioner of Police has said, to protect and keep Trinidad and Tobago safe and secure. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Cyprian.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to join in this debate. I support the motion brought by my colleague and endorse the comments that he has already given on that motion. You know, as I listen to the Honorable Minister of National Security, I'm thinking, oh Lord, what will they blame me for again? What will they blame me for again?
The defeat they're going to get.
I'm fed up. I am so fed up. They're calling my name. UNC blame Kamla, blame UNC blame. Listen, you have said you have done all these things. You have done all these things. And yet, today, the murder rate is what?
89.
89 in 57 days, maybe more. We're in the chamber, I don't know. So you're singing your own praises. You've done so many things, but none of it is working. That is very, very clear. It is not working. And whilst I could stand up, because I anticipated everything that you would have said that we did wrong, blaming us, because you have repeated those untruths. Repeat, ad nauseum. Look, I have here a press release from your Commissioner of Police, our Commissioner of Police, issued in July, just to debunk one of those untruthful things, that we dismantled some facial recognition at the airport. This is in July 2017. The person who is your present commissioner, our present commissioner, made this statement before he became Commissioner of Police. And it was in response to Minister Young recently made alarming comments in Parliament, alluding that the previous government was not in communication with the international allies, and also about deliberately switching off its security system to pinpoint facial recognition. That's the exact thing that he said here in 2017. And the press release from July 2017 answered that untruth. I read from it. I have the world of respect for Minister Young, but I'm obliged to clarify that those comments are totally inaccurate. And I do believe that he may have been misguided, etc. Continuing, switching off the system for facial recognition. This is from Captain Gary Griffith, Commissioner of Police, in 2017. Being the security advisor and Minister of National Security almost throughout the whole period of the previous administration's term in office, I can categorically state that at no time was any decision or discussion made at the National Security Council level to direct that any switch be turned off that could have pinpointed facial recognition. So likewise, the cancer OPVs, those OPVs were defective, there were deficiencies, there were delays.
He wouldn't know.
And we recovered $1.4 billion cancer OPVs. The hostile vessels, you blame us for buying defective vessels that never sailed one day. And you're still coming for these hostile vessels. They were ordered by a previous PNM administration, came into the country, and we have been advised by the Australians that those vessels were for lakes. So they remain there, they have not been used. Go down now, you'll see them all parked up there, rusting. Reminds me of the MVSU, which never sailed a single day, bought by Diego Martin. Reminds me of that. So look, I can continue with this, with the rebuttals, but this blame game will get us nowhere. And I listened carefully to see what the member would share with us. Does the government have a plan to deal with crime, to fight the crime?
No.
And listen to him is the same old, but there is an underlying shred and threat in the matters that the Honourable Minister raised, which goes back to what the member for Naparima talked about, that this government is not about preventing crime. This government is about locking up people, suppressing crime. So when the minister talked about legislative initiatives that they had brought that we had not supported, and he talked about anti-gang and he talked about the bail bill, you know why we did not support those? And we will still not support it, not because we have any love for any criminal, but because you cannot erode. I don't know of any family member as well who may be a criminal. I don't know. You will have to tell me because you seem to think everybody we talk to are criminals.
Shame.
But I doubt that anyone here, any one of us has a family member.
None, not me.
Who may be such.
Not me.
And in this country, you see, it's all nice. It's a good child. That's a good child. When you have money, you could pay bail and get out.
Yeah.
But the people who cannot afford to pay bail, they are the ones who remain. And I will talk a bit about that, tying back with my colleague here. This thing is not just about locking up people. So you come here about legislative interventions. I said, why did we not support this? Why not? Let me just share with you very quickly our legislative track record, which I will find in a moment. What else? Contrary to a song that is sung all the time from this government, here's it. Oops. Mantra that they repeat. We don't support special majority bills. We don't support their bills. We don't support their bills. Let me read the history for you. Crime fighting bills, we supported 8 crime fighting bills. The bail access to bail amendment bill, and we made extensive amendments. So we don't trust you because your initiative, you know, you talk about why we want to protect people with big gun hunting. You know why? Because there are wicked people in this country. Ones like those who were behind putting missiles and cocaine in the water tank of a member of parliament. And so we have to guard citizens to make sure we have the check back and the hold back, to make sure their rights are not violated. And that is why we make these amendments. And that is why we cannot support your bills as they were. As they were, we made amendments. So the bail bill, 2017. The miscellaneous provisions, mutual assistance in criminal matters, proceeds of crime, financial intelligence unit of TNT, and customs and exchange control bill. We supported that with amendments. The miscellaneous provisions, Supreme Court of Judicature bill, we made extensive amendments. We supported. The payments into court bill, again, we made amendments, supported. The Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Amendment Bill 2018, again, made amendments and supported. The Firearms Amendment Bill 2019, we support, was not needed, but we took a division and we supported it. The Firearms Bill. The Civil Asset Recovery and Management and Unexplained Wealth 2019. You didn't need our support, but we supported it because it was a good piece of law. So you always pointing fingers saying, we afraid, we afraid. The only thing I'm afraid of is that you should get back into government. You should all go. This country, you say we are scaremongering. We are scared. The people are scared. People in this country are scared. You will see it. People are afraid to go out. You're afraid to leave your children at home. You're afraid to send them to school. People are scared because we are in a crime crisis in this country. And what does the minister tell me? Put up his hand and say, I am not responsible for crime. Your own words, Pontius Pilate, wash your hands. That is not good enough. That is not good enough. And today you shared no ideas, no plan, no hope could you bring us. You said what you were doing and what you had done, and it is clear to every human being in this country that those things have not worked. The crime continues to spiral. We supported you on other special, so that's 8 crime-fighting bills we supported you on. We support you on another set of bills that required, 6 bills that required special majority. 6. The Tax Information Exchange Agreement, we supported it, the FATCA, the famous FATCA. We didn't support it at first because you didn't have the checks and the balances. We made it a better piece of law. We supported the Anti-Gang Act 2016. Coming here to talk about anti-gang that we don't support. We supported the Anti-Terrorism Amendment Act 2018. We supported the License Committee Validation Act, where you validated retroactively License Committee Validation Act 2018. We supported the Bail Amendment Bill 2019. From the record, from the Hansard records, from the parliamentary records, there was one bill we didn't support, the Miscellaneous Provisions Anti-Gang and Bail Bill 2016. We defeated it because we were not satisfied that the checks and the balances were there to protect people. And then we asked you again. On December 7th, we defeated it, and I wrote to you, you wrote to me, and the last time the Attorney General said that he sent me these big letters from Minister of Finance, and I never replied. I gave the letter that was read here, that we had replied to that letter. So they don't tell the truth, you know. And they sing the same song all the time. The Anti-Gang Bill 2017, we reintroduced it, we worked together, made amendments, and we passed it. So you're now coming back with another one. Legislative. Minister talked about legislation that we are not supporting. So let's get that very clear. And then uses his time here to talk about the interception bill that we freed. You know, before we passed the Interception Act in this country, we did it. We did it. Given the circumstances in which you will be able to listen to conversations and so on. Yes? We brought it. And we gave 3 officers in the protective services the power to apply for warrants and so on. Now you come here and tell me that bill is before the Senate. It is not yet on order paper, so I guess it was not anticipated. But in my respectful view, it was anticipating that debate when that bill comes here. And talks about interception. Well, why would be afraid that prisoners and the vans and wherever they are, that you want to be able to intercept it? But that's not what that bill is all about. The other provisions in that interception bill is going to damage every citizen in this country and breach their rights. This will attack media personnel, journalists. Yes? I mean, everything. Dishonest. Yes, it's not telling the whole truth. Because we said, I did put out a statement that we will not support that as it is. It's going to damage everybody that you can listen. And you know, when I looked at the SSA reports, madam, I don't have it in front of me, so I'll just use the figures about. I know one was laid today for 2017, but the one that was laid previously in 2016, it talks about 283,000 intercepts being made. Right? That's just Makoyan, you know. 283,000 Makoyan, because you cannot use that in court. In order to use it, you have to get a warrant. But when you look at the number of warrants granted, 8 or 9. Wow. So you tap 283,000 about conversations, and only went for 9 warrants. So a real Mako bill. That bill I've said is a Mako bill brought by a Mako government. That's all that is. To Mako the citizens. Talking about interception. So UNC scaremongering, we block the initiatives, we politicizing crime. How far we will go to promote crime, insinuating, and not very cleverly either, that we in fact promoting crime in this country. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. We have tried repeatedly to bring motions about crime fighting in the South. Yes. Today we have that opportunity to talk about it. And so I can debunk all the points made. All the points made, the OPF cancer, hostile vessels, that was your orders, about the damned vessels under international investigation. International criminal, it has absolutely nothing to do with Trinidad and Tobago. I challenge you to go up and find the evidence to substantiate that outrageous statement, that the untruth, that the damned vessels purchased here, some investigation. That has to do with damned Holland. It has nothing to do with Trinidad and Tobago. This is the information. It does find it. Show us the evidence. You make all these unsubstantiated comments. Talks about the serious evidence unit shut down and what and what. When we disbanded the SORT, which was an illegal entity, it was a cabinet-appointed body.
Member for Superior. Members, the crosstalk is really becoming unbearable. So please comply with Standing Order 53. Member for Superior.
Very much, Madam Speaker. Illegally obtaining performing body one, they brought these foreign news retirees from Britain, 130 of them. They paid them far more money than they were paying the locals and so on. When we disbanded and sent those, that's where we were able to get some of the money to give every officer the $1,000 per month. We were paying these foreigners, and the crime was going down, madam. The crime was not going, it was going up. So they were inefficient, ineffectual, very costly. Okay, yes, we shut them down. And when we shut them down, the zero that you talked about that we disbanded or whatever it is, we didn't do that. We relocated them. They were at Komoto. We put them under the TTPS, which they still are. So, again, an untruth. SORT disbanded, I spoke about that. Talk about ministers going to Komoto and picking up cars. All those cars were distributed to ministries and to members. This is what the vehicles used by Mr. Manning for the summit. Yes? No minister went and pick up those vehicles anywhere.
Nonsense.
Talk about the CCTV camera. I know my colleague MP Munilal has dealt with this issue before, and I leave it in his ballpark to raise it again. Talk about the prison's fence, all these things. Look, I have them all, you have it all here to rebut every one of those points. But let's not waste time, because I really want to spend some time to talk about some plans we have. Madam, I have this. We shared with you in the Parliament the master plan for economic transformation. And I will share some, because the time will not permit. I will share some of our master plan for national security master plan for when we get back into office. Yes. And again, the approach is not just about what my colleague talked about, suppression and locking up people, madam. And that's all I heard the minister speak about. I didn't hear anything about how you help people to prevent the crime. How we can help people, how we can help these young people who get locked up, go to jail, they don't have money to pay bail. We have to look at different mechanisms to help people, not just lock them up, throw away the key. That's not the answer to fighting crime. My colleague mentioned certain initiatives we had which were outside of the criminalization of people. I will not repeat those. And then with the failure in the economy, I think our fourth year into what may be into recession and so on, the job losses, poverty and jobs and so on. These are the things we have to look at if we have to have a holistic approach in the fight against crime. So, madam, the first thing I would propose, and we will discuss it further, these proposals which I've extracted from my master plan, is to restructure the Ministry of National Security. So this is not about locking up people. This is about better competencies in the fight against crime. The member for Port of Spain, where is he? Talk and go on. The member for Port of Spain told us today, he said, all we can do here is legislation. And I'm thinking, okay, well, yeah, we come here, we pass legislation. But when you sit down in your office, what do you do? What do you do in the fight against crime? So your job is, if you see your job as being coming here and passing laws, then that is a totally flawed kind of reasoning. Flawed logic. You need to be able to, the administrative aspects of crime fighting, those are some things that we do. So I propose that we will restructure the Ministry of National Security, because the present system is obviously flawed. You have 3 ministers in national security at the moment, huh? What's happening? Crime continues to spiral. So that's not the answer. It's not the answer. I think the present way the ministry is structured, it cannot adapt to what's going on and what's happening in our nation. So we split the Ministry of National Security, and we create a Ministry of Home Affairs and a Ministry of Defense. And what's in a name? What's in a name? It is what each ministry will be comprised of. That's what this is about. It's not just a name change. So in the Ministry of Home Affairs, We will deal primarily with internal law enforcement, which involves the focus on policing to ensure that deterrents are provided, and will involve action before the crime is committed as well. If the crime is committed and there's apprehension, such measures will include all aspects of policing, surveillance, use of electronic security, proper intelligence gathering, as well as major aspects to internal security, and will comprise fire as well, the fire services. The Ministry of Defense will be based on the critical need of protection of our borders from illegal entry of drugs, weapons, human trafficking, worldwide increasing concern of terrorism. So we need to have a ministry that will encompass all of this, known as the Ministry of Defense. This ministry would be newly established based on new threats and clear and present danger that all nations are now facing, both in border protection, problems encounter illegal entry of weapons, drugs, human trafficking, hence the focus on border protection, and establish networks to work with international allies. That's another thing the minister said, we didn't work with international allies. That same media release from Captain Gary Griffith talks about that not being true as well, madam, as I meant to this. So what I see here, the major arms of the Ministry of Home Affairs, the TTPS, the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service, Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service for the time being, but we will eventually go back to our Ministry of Justice because that's an important component of the fight against crime. And of course, the Ministry of the People will go back. You took the people out of that ministry. You took the people out of that ministry. That's why you could boast you take away 18,000 food cards. People lost their jobs. You don't know how they're eating. And you're happy you take away 18,000 food cards. The Ministry of the People for the social aspects of helping people who are in poverty and therefore fight crime. So, Office of Disaster Preparedness, Cadets, SSA, National Security Training Academy, E99 Call Center, Community Comfort Patrols, which you took away. These are the things I see will fit nicely into the Ministry of Home Affairs. In terms of the Ministry of Defense, now remember what I said, this is for border protection, whether it be in terms of people, whether it be in terms of drugs, whether it be in terms of illegal arms, and so on. This will comprise, first of all, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. Secondly, the Customs Division. Customs should be removed from finance, because once upon a time, you thought customs was just to collect money. But it's not about that. It's about everything passing through customs. It's not about money. So this has to be a defensive measure. This has to be part of the architecture. Customs Division removed from Ministry of Finance and come under this newly created Ministry of Defense. The Immigration Department would come under the Ministry of Defense because both immigration and customs, they fall into the category of border security. Then the Transnational Organized Crime Unit, again, international networks, the National Security Special Operations Group, the Radar Center, Counter-Trafficking Unit, Covert and Counter-Terrorist Unit. These, amongst others, will be placed in this ministry to be known as Ministry of Justice. This has become really international best practice. In the US, for example, they have the Ministry of Homeland Security. Yes? And then you have your other national security apparatus and architecture. So for the Ministry of Defense, it is border control. As I said before, whether it is food coming in, whether it is guns coming in, whether it is people coming in, whether it's human trafficking, all these matters, border control. And you know, talking about that OPV was the lockdown borders, I think would have been so far off out in the ocean. Far, far out, it could never be able to lock down borders. That's what we got the dam investors for. But you are not resourcing. You are not resourcing the Coast Guard. They don't have fuel to put in the vessels so that they can properly use them. And my God, you complain about that Chinese vessel. I don't know what it is, but I'll tell you, that vessel is being very much used by the Coast Guard. That vessel we got from China. So I'm saying these two new ministries, and of course, madam, again, time will not permit all the details, but that is the gist of it. The second thing I want to share with you is that we will implement an increase in the retirement age for persons in the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. Increase in the retirement age. Why? Why would we want to do that? Because at the moment, Very experienced people have to leave at such an early age. 47, yeah, 47. And they're experienced personnel, yes? When they leave, where do they go? What job they're getting? That's the other side of it. And in other countries, again, best practice, you look at, in the case of Canada and Denmark, compulsory retirement age for regular forces and primary reserves is 60 years. Norway, military personnel can serve maximum of 40 years or up to the age of 60, whichever comes first. Australia has a general ceiling for commissioned and non-commissioned officers of 60. This is based on principle of assessment should be based on the person's ability to perform the task of the particular job regardless of the age. And I well know that. Age is just a number. It is your ability, your strength to perform. That is what counts. You work it on ability, on the person's ability. Well, I'm sure Madam Speaker is well aware age is just a number.
Well said.
So
I endorse that.
So it's your ability. I mentioned Norway, Australia, and so on, based on the person's ability to perform, rather than a set age, you say, by 47, goodbye, goodbye, go. The records show us, madam, that within the Defense Force, over 98% of the Defense Force, they never continue up to the age of 50 years, primarily because of the present retirement ages. There's also a significant proportion of servicemen at the rank of major, lieutenant commanders, squadron leaders. They have to retire at 47 after working really for maybe approximately half of their working life. So we should note that the Defense Force has been actually generating a large pool of young retirees, I mentioned it before, and if not employed, will have to wait until pensionable age to get even old age pension, which is what, 65 for old age pension? Yeah. So you'll have to leave at 47. What do you do between 47 and 65? The extension of these ages would assist in retention of experience in the Defense Force. And of course, there are those who are of the view that the Defense Force is like an appendix. It is disposable. In Costa Rica, I remember once I was in Brazil in a World Economic Forum on a panel together with the then president of Costa Rica. And she boasted how they had disbanded the Defense Force and taken the money to build schools and, deal with poverty reduction and so on. So they don't have a Defense Force. And at that time, I thought maybe we should get these men involved into more internal policing. But given the way the world is now, I think it's very important. And given my vision for having a Minister of Defense and allocating immigration, customs, all those other matters that I raised before, we don't need the Defense Force there. And we have tremendous experience in them. So we will increase the retirement age, madam. But we will also increase the maximum age for recruitment. At the moment, it is 25 years. So after 25, you cannot be recruited. So we are saying the maximum should be 27 years, which will allow access for a wider and more mature pool of suitably qualified persons. An extension, again, madam, of the retirement age is part of a wider holistic human resource reform, which will include a more aggressive recruitment approach. Further, madam, I have said this before, I repeat it again, that in future as we go forward, we should recruit police recruits. They should come in with undergraduate diplomas, undergraduate and postgraduate degrees in policing. So we had envisaged that these courses could be taught at the UWI. There's a David facility, and we talked about setting up a forensic center there, as well as training for police officers. Some of the courses, law, governance, and the criminal justice system, neighborhood and community safety, understanding vulnerability, risk, and threats in society, technology in policing, policing criminology, practical forensics for policing. That's a very important thing. Practical forensics. You may not be a forensic scientist, a professor of forensics and so on, but the ordinary policeman has to have a good grasp of something like that. Several other courses, madam, but to really train these officers prior to recruitment, we bring them in and we give them some of these diplomas, graduate and postgraduate, improving efficiency, of course, and competence. And how much time do I have, please? About 15, huh? Yeah, okay. I want to talk a bit about bail reform. This government, their answer is lock up everybody, keep them in jail without bail forever. We have to leave the checks and balances. We have to have the discretion in the judges. They have a discretion too. But we can assist if we do proper bail reform, not just come and find more and more people to lock up for longer periods of time without bail, madam. That is not the answer. There must be a more humane way in dealing with bail. My colleague spoke about young people, being incarcerated. I made the point earlier, and the minister may have thought I was referring to him and someone he knows, but it is this. Bail, this present system of bail is structured in such a way that the people who have the money can pay the bail or the bond or whatever, and they can get out. It is the poor people who cannot afford that. They remain in jail. They remain because they cannot, and that cannot be right. So I think we should have things to do with pre-trial detention and bail reform. So, for example, if...
Honourable Member for Superior, your original speaking time is now spent. You're entitled to 15 more minutes to complete your contribution. Members, I would just advise if the Member for Superior is taking 15 minutes, it will take us a few seconds after 4:30, so that I'll ask if it's your wish that she's allowed to complete before we take the suspension. Please continue.
Thank you very much. Thank you. On your issue of pre-trial detention and bail reform, madam, the scheme, as I say, benefits those with the resources. Defendants who currently remain incarcerated are often poor, they may be suffering from mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and so on. And so the bail should not be used to punish these individuals, really. It is not to be set higher than necessary to preserve public safety. What it is for, we know bail is to ensure that you return to court on your court days. That's what it is for. It is not a punishment because you haven't been found guilty or not guilty yet. It's not punishment. But for those who cannot afford to pay it, as I say, it is in the nature of punishment. We know what the jail situation is like, the overcrowding, the whatever else you could imagine, the worst possible, what happens there. This gives you, the overcrowding gives these acute psychological trauma that somebody gets when they go in there. And the consequences, madam, are very, very real for people who are poor people especially. They're brutal. Many of them live from paycheck to paycheck. When you incarcerate them inside there, what happens? Yes, what happens? They have no support financially for themselves or for their families. They can't, and if they don't go to work, what happens? They get fired. They don't show up to work. They're stripped of the ability to earn a living. They may lose access to housing and benefits. They may fall short on payments they may have to make, cut them off from their families and support system. And I said this happens whether you're guilty or not guilty, because it is pre-trial detention. If you keep low or medium risk persons in jail pre-trial, you're destabilizing them. You're taking away from them the things that made them low risk to begin with. So there are alternative approaches. There will be those you will definitely want inside there without bail. I'm not speaking about those. So we are speaking about risk assessments. In other jurisdictions, this is what happens. You have individual risk and financial assessments. Other places, madam, they are turning to this now because they also face that problem, of inner city youth being incarcerated, poor, can't pay bail and so on. So what is done? You do individualized assessment to consider the defendant's personal, financial, criminal background in order to inform bail decisions. These risk profiles can be used to determine appropriate amounts as well as who must remain behind bars. And I'm saying there will be some that you really don't want them out there, staying without bail. And there are those who can be released under the supervision of pre-trial services program, and they can leave on their own bond, as it were. So I propose that we look into and consider minimum security detention centers. We set up a number of these minimum security detention centers. And we put there now, these will house non-violent offenders, yes, who are remanded pre-trial, but they can't pay for the bail. So they can stay there, they're non-violent. And we tie this together with a work release during the daytime. So you have a center, one in north, one in south, one in east, one in central, one in Tobago. And not maximum security. As I said, these are non-violent offenders. I mean, a man didn't pay his parking ticket. Well, you have the demerit system now, but you could go to jail. You can't pay your maintenance for your children, court-ordered maintenance. You're going to jail. How you make any money to even pay them? So we have these pre-trial centers, and during the daytime, they can be released to go to work. Go to work. Because you didn't pay the maintenance doesn't mean you're violent. It means maybe you're not working for enough money, you don't have the money, all a host of reasons, but you shouldn't go to jail for that. In most cases, again, I'm saying there will be exceptional cases. And you allow them to go to work in the day and then come back and stay in the night. All rehab facilities and treatments should be offered to persons who have issues with drug abuse and or mental illness issues. We should not be placing persons, I just locked them up in the jail there. We need to give them rehabilitation. So we must have, always, my colleague spoke of it, rehabilitative measures. And then we work on a case-by-case basis to access work release, as I said, during hours and let them come back after. So that's one suggestion, one alternative method to just locking up poor people and throwing away the key. Yeah. We will bring a piece of legislation to prevent incarceration of non-violent drug offenders. It is drug abuse. Locking them in there is not going to help you. We bring compulsory drug treatment and not incarceration. Again, this is for non-violent offenders, non-violent offenders. We must give them drug treatment programs for rehabilitation. Locking them down is just going to further ruin their lives. So we are doing a disservice to our citizens by just locking them up. No rehabilitation. In this country, when you're poor, you're really poor. The worst happens to you. That's what is going on. And when you talk about they don't care, they really don't care. Because even in the same breath today, coming about more law to lock up people. And I'm saying I will not support those laws where they could frame you. And be it known, possession of guns and so on, Madam Speaker, you may well know, it's everybody, I mentioned the setups already, but it's everybody on the premises, you know, a man pelt in your yard a gun, sleeping in the night, and next morning they come and find it. What happens? Everybody in that house going down, you know, every man jack going down. So we cannot pass those kind of draconian laws without proper balance. And I mentioned already about planting people, framing you up and so on. So it's not that we're afraid. I don't own a gun. I don't even want to own a gun. Don't even want it. It's not a question of fair. It's a question of rights and so on. Then we have this with the anchor bracelets and house arrest. There are some offenders. What has become of that? We left the legislation for the anchor bracelets. Remember that? We passed the law. So there are some offenders, again, non-violent offenders. What about old people and so on, infirm people? Locking them inside there, not going to help. So this is pre-trial detentions I'm talking about, madam. So we could monitor them. You have the ankle bracelets, you could monitor them. Wherever they are, you know where they are. House arrest, there are some you may say, okay, you can't leave the house. The others, you can have the ankle bracelet, but you could go to work. And so, again, pre-trial detention, we need some serious reform in that regard. Further, madam, I think there should be some level of state-funded support for children whose parents may be in jail. Some kind of state, and that is something we have as part of the plan that we will flesh out. These children suffer is not because they have something on their part, of their fault, parent incarcerated. And I think we have to consider, and let me say, we will bring the legislation long promised by this government to give the $1 million to the compensation to the protective services if they are killed in the line of duty. We will bring it. Spend 4.5 years, promise, never bring the legislation. We will bring that. And we will also bring legislation, as I'm saying, to set up some kind of fund for children of persons who have been killed. No parent, no money. How do you live? Reduce dropout, yes. End up maybe with a criminal record as well. So we will have to consider some minimum level of state funding to children of persons who have lost their lives. And you know, the comfort patrol, community comfort patrol, we shut it down. Did you bring it back? That is so important in hotspot areas especially, that you need this bonding with the police. They are not just there to lock you up. They are not just this lock-up concept that you have. That's not what they are about. They are there to give you that level of comfort as you are in your communities, hotspot communities and so on. And or, yeah, that comfort level, but working closely with communities. We have a police post hotspot there in community, in the Duncan Street Police Post. I think we built that, Dr. Munal, Duncan Street Police Post, yeah. Who is Spanish? The Venezuelans? You know, that is so totally untrue. I could tell you who built it right now, you know. It's Caribbean Financial something.
Teach him.
Caribbean Facilities something.
Teach him.
Are they criminals? They continued working for your government. I challenge you to bring any evidence that Caribbean Facilities who got the contract, bring the contract. Bring the contract. They got the contract to build a Duncan Street Police Station. They got the contract from the government. The government built it. Government built it. We built it, the government. Caribbean Facilities, madam, I have 1 minute.
Member for Laventille West, if you want to make an intervention, you know how to do it. Please. Member for Superior.
Madam, this allegation being made all over the place, I challenge them to provide a contract that was signed between the government of Trinidad and Tobago through UNICOT, Caribbean Facilities. Yeah. And tell me if they are criminals. If they are criminals. They built it, madam, the Duncan Street Police Station. So I'm saying, you know, at that police post, we had a lot of family matters taking place, giving assistance to the community there. It was done in a bid to suppress crime, of course, and also to help the community. So homework center, children coming in, a lot of that. That is something we may want to look at island-wide, the two islands, community and intra-familial violence, domestic violence. Yeah, community and domestic violence issues can be dealt with in that regard. Now remember, in his bid to be, as he done such a great thing, he said they built, what, 2 police stations?
2.
4.5 going into 5 years later, that's your claim to fame, you built 2 police stations. In our time in office, we built 8 state-of-the-art police stations, 8 police stations. It is very clear. Finished St. Joseph, yes. Well, they turned the key for the St. Joseph, but it was built.
So it's 1.5.
In our term. Madam, as I close, I believe that the government has totally failed to fulfill its mandate to protect the people. That is like your first task. Because if you're not alive, you cannot enjoy any good health, any education, any job, you can't enjoy anything. So the first thing is to protect our citizens. Crime is indeed at a crisis level, and today I have lost all hope in that government and that minister. All they can do is blame, but they have no plan, and they never had, and they never will. They are on their last legs as they go out of office. It is clear that into this 5 years, this Rowley-led government has no clue to deal with crime. We cannot afford another 5 years under the Rowley PNM. And we say tackling the crime menace, we put menace as a #1 priority. So serious it is, we'll continue our consultations with various stakeholders, madam, and as I close, I commend my master plan. You can't say anything. Oh, sorry. Okay, this master plan, we will go out, we'll roll out more of it as we go along. With those few words, madam, I thank you very much for your time.
Honourable members, it's now 4:28:54. I suggest that now is a convenient time for us to take the suspension. So this House is now suspended. We shall resume at 5 p.m.